What's up, everybody? This is Magic Collins, aka Magic Man. This is Fight the Funk podcast. This is episode 50. Episode 50. I'm excited today, man. It's going to be a good conversation. Looking forward to it. And also, I just wanted to remind everybody, Fight the Funk podcast is a part of the Ed Up Experience Network. Well, I like to think it's the knowledge of growth, like the growing of knowledge, as we always are continuing to learn. And yeah, man, this is a great episode that I'm looking forward to. And also about myself, I'm a mental health advocate. I keep forgetting to say that. And I'm gonna bring up your guest today is Brandon Allen, the poet, the author, spoken word. He's done TEDx. And he's running a program that I really feel excited about for the kids and the youth. What's up, Brandon? How you doing, man?
What's up? How you doing today? How's everybody doing? I hope you're all well.
Good, man. Good. I'm glad to have you, man.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. I appreciate it, my bro.
Definitely. Hey, so one of the things I noticed right off the bat is you've been working for a program, Rescue a Generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so, like, you know, as far as where we're going through, everything that has happened, the protests, social justice. What is that like? Can you explain that the program?
Yeah. So one of the great things about Rescue a Generation is that we really believe in young people, and we believe in them with like high capacity. It just, to kind of give you some information or rundown. We operate a success club, and one of the biggest things that we do in schools is operating our success clubs, and that's like our 10-week programs. But overall, like, we stand for so many things. Like, so we our mission statement is we desire to see the transformation of our young people through empowerment, motivation, and of course for us the gospel as well. So we believe in uplifting young people and pushing them towards the possibilities of their future, and we help them feel like they can overcome any obstacles through family, through culture, through society, through everything that they're fighting in and fighting through right now. So it's like one of the huge things that we rock in. So it's really a thing for us. So like I said, our program, it's a 10-week success club curriculum where we motivate them through success principles, and we're expert life coaches. So we life coach them through rethinking success, through overcoming failure, through dealing with pain, through getting through quitting and not quitting, through celebrating yourself, through reconnecting to friends and what your friends look like. Then we connect them back to family and understanding family in that conversation, and also mentors and leaders. Then we go into this relationship context, whether platonic or intimate relationships, but mostly we focus on value in that conversation, self-value. And then we finish it off of them understanding that they're the real MVPs of their story, and that that they are the ones who are valued, and that they need to understand the power in which their stories manifest, and that they can't look outside all the time for somebody to come shift what needs to happen in their lives, but they have to be the shift in their own culture.
That's dope. Now, with that, because that's powerful, man. And then with that, I know there's a story behind your own personal journey to get to that point where you can reach the youth and share your story and what you've been through. Well, so you're from Memphis.
Yeah, born in Memphis.
And I know you always probably gonna get the barbecue, and so I got to ask you though, man. You in Cali, so what's your go-to barbecue spot in California? Not to hurt no feelings, not to
You know what's funny? Like, I'm gonna tell you the truth, and y'all probably gonna hate me to hear this. Like, because I don't eat beef and pork, I haven't really had barbecue, like for real, other than homemade barbecue, in a while. So, because I don't eat ribs, I don't eat none of that. So I don't go like out to be like, oh, let me go get barbecue. You get what I'm saying?
No vegan spots, no.
Nah, man, a vegan vegan barbecue spot, like, that'd be dope. I'm sure there's a couple of them out here.
Yeah, we'll put that out there, man. Like vegan barbecue spot. Now, so with the journey to rescue a generation, you did have to rescue yourself as well, and And I know, I'm sure that took like mentors and people that kind of came through this, like that helped as well. Like what is some of the things that you've been through?
Yeah, so a lot of my story has to do with overcoming mental health, right? The struggle, the passion of having to really go through the journey of being defeated, dealing with suicidal ideations, depression, feeling lack of motivation, all these different things that really tormented me for years. Like I started dealing with depression in 7th grade. And most people don't talk about that stuff with middle school kids. In fact, back then when I was in middle school, nobody talked about that at all. You tell your parents that you felt depressed, they'll smack you in the face and say, "Well, you better go find the rest of you and get together." Like, you know what I mean? Like you couldn't talk about mental health. That conversation didn't really happen. And through the context of what I was going through and what I was raised in and what I had to really figure out, it took a toll on me. Like I dealt with a lot of things like addiction within the household, which ended up filtering into addiction into myself. But the most difficult part was trying to find like identity when I was shaped and raised in the things I was raised in. I was for a long time. So through all of elementary school and most of middle school, like I would be the only Black person in my class. And in my neighborhood, I was the only Black person in my neighborhood, Black family, Black family.
What is that like with that? I feel like there's a lot of people that grow up in rural areas, in more affluent areas. And it's like, I feel like a lot of Black and Indigenous people have that identity crisis when you're in predominantly white spaces. How have you kind of journeyed through that experience?
That identity crisis was crazy because I didn't know I was going through a crisis. And that was the most difficult part. Like not knowing that I was the issue. Like for people to have to tell me like, bro, do you realize like how you acted or the way you would portray yourself or how people to treat you or things like that, and not realizing like I was the issue. So it would be so much happening to where it would be a difficult circumstance. Ultimately, where I dealt with like this dichotomy of who I was, right? For a long time, right? Not having this understanding of my culture, not having this understanding of really what I was doing, the personal damage, the self-inflicting that I was doing on myself due to lack of understanding. Then I moved from Memphis to California to where I'm like endowed in this multiracial, fondue of races, like this whole thing, like this like the mixing pot, what they call it, like, and melting pot. They call it melting pot. So many different races and cultures. Like I've learned about races that I never even knew about when I moved out here. I didn't even understand. Like I never met a Samoan, like until I got to California. But it was just trying to figure out who I was in the midst of that left me lost, to where I had a lot of anger and resentment to what I grew up in. And like there was a period of time where I resented different cultures because I felt like a sense of anger, like oh my gosh, like I didn't know this. And then I had this outright anger, and eventually anger turned into just disconnection, but eventually it morphed into desiring to be a bridge, yet with the awareness of what that all looks like. So so now, like my idea of with all the racial stuff and all the injustice, like I felt that anger rising up again, but I had a moment to where I realized I was like uniquely placed to have conversations in spaces that might not normally have these conversations, right? I can life and information and hopefully some reconciliation and shift in spaces where they probably wouldn't normally go. And they probably normally have a conversation.
Okay. And then I got a message. So the youth, talking about mental health is still hard for a lot of the youth, and you work with youth. Like, how do you kind of for parents and teachers and educators, how do you have any advice as far as like how they approach talking about mental health? Because it's still, 60%, 63% of the Black community still shy away from talking about mental health.
Yeah. No, yeah, no, absolutely. And here's the crazy thing, right? And this is what I tell people. When pandemic hit, everybody was on the same playing field. So it doesn't matter where you were, what your mindset was, what your thought process was about mental health, what everything happened before when pandemic hit, we all have hit a playing field to where nobody knew what was going on, where everybody was struggling from the same thing, where fear hit everybody, where caution hit everybody, where like anxiety hit everybody. Right. We all were hit with the same wave. So this misconception or disconnection from mental health no longer could possibly live. Like, because the reality is that we all were battling with the same mental health issues simultaneously. We all hit with the same constant of like, oh shoot, what is this? Oh no, I'm afraid. Oh no, is it going to affect me? What about my family? Will I be able to get past? When will we? You know what I mean? All the same questions arose for everybody.
Yeah, and there was that moment where it's like, is the world over? Like there was that moment where it's like, oh, it's the end of the world kind of deal.
You know,
and
people have all kinds of things, but I say that to say so that to kind of to progress. Like the reality of what we have to do now is make it a norm. A normal conversation, right? Create safe places for normal conversations around mental health, right? So we don't call ourselves mental health experts. We don't call ourselves necessarily those who would say that we are counselors or therapists or anything, but because we're life coaches, we ask questions that really help you do the inner work of realizing mental health. So we fall in the lane of prevention and early intervention. So where we have conversations, do preventative measures, and really fall and discuss topics in the manner of mental health, social emotional learning, and really giving the students the opportunity to dive deep in themselves. That idea, whole discussion of social emotional learning really is the space to where we can build and bridge and have these great conversations. I don't know if you've been able to do any like research about social emotional learning or any of that conversation, but social emotional learning is a game changer because like that's really where all of the context or all of the need for what we're doing with students, what we're doing with ourselves, everything like really kind of falls in line because it puts everything within those 5 core areas of self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. Those 5 core areas of social emotional learning. It allows us to really have these healthy conversations with students, especially when this is involved in your either Common Core curriculum or where it's an extension of what you're doing in the schools. So balancing these conversations, though you might not be directly talking therapy, though you might not be directly offering them specific therapeutic services, having these social emotional conversations within these 5 core areas now gives you the opportunity to really do work with students that's outside of the normal turned in your math homework today. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. Now I feel like so for parents and people like working a job and then they got the kids and all that kind of stuff, like how do you offer something or have those resources for somebody that might not know social emotional learning, but it can, how do you get that into the neighborhoods that might not really understand it or want to know it? It's like,
no, that's a great question. The reality is that a lot of spaces don't necessarily know how to tap into those resources. So we try to tap into those spaces, right? So we try to go into those schools. We try to get involved in those school districts. We try to bring like awareness in those programs. Honestly, the parents who are becoming interested or the parents who are aware should be having conversations with the school boards or like, going to the meetings, talking to the principals. Like, what are we doing in regards to social emotional learning? How are we helping our students deal with the emotions of right now? If your school is not helping your students deal with the struggles of pandemic, then your school is not properly serving your students. And that's real. Like you can't expect them to deal with pandemic, distance learning, all this struggle and not really have any help, and that's like out of this world and you're not helping them.
And then we got I'm a slow reader.
Oh, it's all good, man. I'm here for the conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask you as well is how to. I feel like we kind of move forward, but we also are the youngest culture in the world. And I think that's, to me, I always kind of bring it back to that, as we're all learning, and with mental health and Black mental health, it's a personal journey as well, and like you said, the social emotional learning. How do you combat? How have you yourself moved past shame and embarrassment in your lifetime?
Yeah. So the crazy thing is that shame took me for a long time. Even the embarrassment of my story, the inability to tell my story, and the shame of failure, even as I became an adult. One of the things I talk about is like, I had a daughter at a younger age, and like there was a lot of shame and becoming a statistic of a Black male, father,
Mm-hmm.
right? Single Black male father, right? And that construct of being that guy. I never thought I'd be that guy. And like having to deal with the struggles of my past and the things that I went through as a child and through my teenage years. Like I felt like all I was doing was becoming a statistic. And for so long, um, like I dealt with like the emotions of that and the reality of that. And that was a struggle.
Is there a specific moment or story that really kind of turned the corner, or really was a moment where it's like, oh, that was that moment where I had to overcome shame?
Yeah, so there was a moment becoming a father. So
Okay.
the reality was, if I didn't deal with my story, how could I ever teach somebody else to deal with theirs? And I had to learn how to really deal with the emotions of what happens. And I think that's what happens to us as parents, to us as leaders, to us as those who are mentors or motivators, to us. Like we forget that somebody is always watching, and that we're called to literally give opportunity or make way for the next generation, right? And in order for us to do that, we have to deal with the things that we have battled with from the now. And sometimes we're called. I tell myself all the time, and I believe, like, tell people that I'm called to be a bridge, right? I'm called to build bridges for others to cross, right? And if you don't effectively build a bridge, then all you're doing is creating a gap. So like if at the end of the day, when somebody's coming to try to get to that next step or get over that hump, if you haven't built a bridge, you created a gap. And now they're going to have to struggle. They're going to have to figure out how to get over. And now you're recreating the cycle of struggle that they're all having to deal with. So you either become a problem or a solution. You know what I mean? So like it's up to us to decide what we're going to be.
Now, I love that point, but I want to interject, is like, because I think when we're dealing with generational traumas, and we're also dealing with being a human being ourselves, it's like we're always trying to be the bridge and not be the gap. Like we're never finished products.
Right.
So how do you deal with, as far as I think that's where perfectionism comes in.
Yeah.
Like
So
you don't want to be the gap, but you're also trying to build a bridge.
Yeah.
I
never get to, one of the things that I had to learn which was really difficult, is like understanding that I don't think I'm ever going to get to a place of woo, I've arrived, or woo,
that doesn't exist.
Yeah. There's no such thing as like arriving, right? So that means that there's constant work. That means that I'm always there. I'm finding more spaces to where I always need work on myself. Because I'm working on myself, I can always also creating spaces for other people to work, right? So the ability of myself to develop here gives me the ability to teach somebody to develop there as well, right? So that consistent cycle, like I do the work to teach you to do the work, right? And now you do the work so you can teach others to do the work, and they continue that same process. So it's constant. You're right, man. There's no space to where you've arrived. There's no like, I'm tapping, I'm done. Like there might be a point to where like you might be finished, like you're done with it, but there's not a point to where you've accomplished or completed, right? You might be done with your time, or your season might have ended in that specific thing, but there's no like, I've perfected a thing.
Yeah. And I think that's important to understand as well. It's like, because you're right, there's been times like, what am I doing, man? Like, but it's like I gotta keep going. Like I gotta just step one foot in front of the other and just keep doing, just do it, just keep going.
I was gonna say the thing about that is that that really helps us is to avoid this idea of comparison, right?
Mm,
That our
mm,
stories have to match somebody else's stories. When we
mm,
live in this lane, and this is what our students, our young people live in, this
mm,
identity of comparison, or they watch this social media realm and they think that life is supposed to be like this, or they think their
mm,
experience is supposed to be like that, or
mm.
certain things like that. Um, it all pushes us to pushes us to a space to where we now want to fulfill a certain idea or journey because we've watched somebody else's journey in that way. So we got to be able to not compare and really
Well,
understand that we're living our own stories in
yeah.
that.
Well, also, I think there's a balance of, because I feel like we always use our heroes and people we look up to. So it's like it's the combination of having the people you admire and look up to,
Yeah,
and also having the people, it's like, and knowing where you're at and what you need to do
yeah,
on a daily basis. Because I think that's where that whole thing is like, even with our civil rights heroes, we put them on a pedestal rather,
hmm
and a lot of times we forget that, oh no, I gotta do that work and to pick up that cause and to move society forward. So I think there's a combination of, yeah, we don't use comparisons, but we also have to work and do the work that our heroes have done already. And I think that's a balance to find, because we're living our human life. It's like a pursuit of a family, of whatever that means for us. And I think that's a balance too. Now, with the personal journey, like, how do you see yourself kind of moving forward with all you're an author, you're a TEDx speaker, you've done a lot. So how do you see yourself continuing to move forward?
Yeah, honestly, I think I see myself moving forward by being consistent, serving the people, the young people that I'm called to, this
Mm,
generation that I'm called to, these young adults, like just being a bridge, like my scripture, I'd say my life scripture is Proverbs 31:8, and to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves, give justice for those being crushed. And I feel like what my life journey is like giving volume back to voices who've been lost, and then like bringing a recognition to the justice of those who've been underserved and underrepresented. And that's in so many different aspects. That could be in the home, that could be in the school, that can be
mm,
in themselves, and that's just really giving them the ability to have volume to their stories. Like, my whole thing is about shifting your story mattering, being motivated by your story, and understanding that you have an individual journey that matters, that's needed, that's necessary, and somebody deserves to hear it, even if it's just
mm,
yourself. And that you should always do the work to be able to tell your story and allow yourself to live out loud, because it's going to bring healing to somebody else.
mm. That's powerful, man.
But
And
thank you.
one thing I'll say, I want to point this out also. You're going to be on our so the Be Well Collaborative is coming up, and you're going to be one of the speakers and the guests on Be Well. Melissa just put it out there. BeWellCollab.com. So I'm also excited to have you as part of that on our webinar coming up.
Me as well.
So yeah, man, yeah. And then so one of the things I feel like what's one thing I think with the culture and what we're always continuum of learning, uh, what's something that you feel that should be implemented in the schools, in the houses, in everyday language?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I feel, and this is going to sound as very silly, but this is my personal journey. But I feel like one of the things that should be implemented within schools is
Mm,
apologizing and
mm,
families. And here's why I say that. I feel like culturally we've been in a place to where people have refused to apologize for what they've inflicted on people.
mm,
Apologize for like mistakes they've made, like this culture of not like being sorry, but really making a connection and dealing with that apology and giving recompense to the fact that somebody has had a journey. Now, this is simple, but like I think about how much healing could have happened in my life as a child if there was real apologies. Like, hey, I know that this happened. I know that this is your story. I know that I caused this, and I apologize. Like I want to actively make it, instead of denial, instead of throwing it off. And I think, of course, that's a journey of mental health. Everybody is only able to handle so much of the reality of circumstances. But if we were able to implement that so much more and have these conversations, and give safe places, young people in general wouldn't have to find that healing in so many outsourced places and situations. They can find resolve and healing and recompense within the spaces that the transgression took place. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the things. But really, overall, this idea of social emotional learning, that space for the home, like that should just become something that's created, like an opportunity for you to talk about all these different emotional areas and really just do the work. There's so many things out there and so many ways that you can effectively have this conversation directed around that. And really it's just focusing on like what makes you more self-aware, what helps you self-manage, what helps you become socially aware, what helps you make responsible decisions, and what helps you understand relationships.
Well, what was one moment as far as like I love the idea of apologize, because I think we come in so many different mental states and survival mode brings out the worst in all of us in different degrees.
Yeah.
So what is there a moment or a time where you felt like this, where you gave that apology, or you received maybe a apology in surprise, where somebody was like, because I also think there's a part of it too where people don't know what, like, until you say, hey, this when you did that, I took it this way, and it's like, what? And then it's like there's also that part of it.
Yeah, one of the things I've had to learn, especially as I gotten older, is that my intentions might be one thing, but the way it affects somebody is something different. And that when it comes down to it, that we have to always actively be in regards or take into consideration somebody else's, how something might have landed on somebody, right? No matter what our intentions or desires have been, because if we're thinking of stories, if we're thinking of journeys and things like that, you have to really know and understand that at the end of the day, like no matter what your effort is, right, that it affects people differently. And you got to go through culture, like, think about the different things that were taught, think about the different things that they're shifted through the generations, like how much, people had a mindset about what they were teaching, but yet they didn't really consider how it would affect the generations to come. And no matter what, efforts, no matter what your intentions, quote unquote, are, they affect people. And you have to be consistently available to have these conversations about what those effects were and make the shifts and changes in the future. So that's my whole thing about that, man. Like, even so me, I've made it, especially with my daughter, like because that space wasn't created. Like, I sit down at times, she tells me this is how she felt. I try my best to find spaces to apologize and be like, okay, this was my intention, this was my understanding. Can we, moving forward, this is how I understand, and we can walk through that, and I can be better with this. Or certain things I just don't say to her anymore because of how it affects her. Right? She said, "Dad, that hurts my feelings when you say this," and I'm like, "This is what I mean." She's like, "I know, but it hurts my feelings." I say, "You know what? I'm just not gonna say it anymore. That hurts your feelings. I just want to avoid that." So make efforts to find those spaces, because the reality is I would love that would be great to have healing in that space, even with my parents, right? Like, if they would be like, "Hey, I know, you've been through this. I don't know how it affected you. I didn't know how it was going to affect you, and now I know." You know what I mean? Or anything like that. Our parents, our generations before, like, it's just important and valid.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you this, because I hear this, but I think with sometimes I think we have our own, like, we'll say a word, or different groups that have this word, and the definition is kind of different for different people. So when I say like toxic masculinity, it's like, what is that for you? Like, because I hear it, But it's like as a male myself, and I've had my own journey with masculinity and manhood and femininity, and it's like what do you like? Cause we use these words and then we just flood the market with them.
So I laugh at that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the reason why I laugh, not because I don't believe in it, I do like
Mm-hmm.
like believe in it hugely. I
Mm-hmm.
think that what it comes down to, I have this conversation, or people have this conversation all the time, because they see the one side of toxic masculinity, of where it's men who've effectively utilized their masculinity in a toxic format and
Mm-hmm.
used it against society, especially women, of this idea of misogyny and things of that nature, and it's really affected culture. But yet there's also that side of toxic masculinity, when you're taught that this is how you're supposed to be a man. And I'm not talking about characteristics of like that are like security or value or certain things, but like things that like men don't cry, or like lacking emotions or valid in masculinity, or making people feel like if you're more connected to your emotions, or if you share you or anything like that, that you're less of a man, or that anything that you have or that you do inside of your characteristics make you less than a man, right? That you can define maleness by what you do, or how you act, or how you portray yourself, right? And I dealt with that, with this idea of my emotions, because for a long time I was a little more emotional, or even now, I'm much more connected to my emotions. I tell people all the time, I cry at a drop of a hat, and that's because like I'm so connected to my emotions now that I don't care, like whatever you don't say. But about this idea that crying was a problem, or that like being able to cry, or like that me having these connections to my feelings were bad because of that culture. Like for this period of time, I was so disconnected from my emotions that I damaged a lot of people. Right? I know I did. Like I damaged a lot of like people. Like I took advantage of a lot of people. I took advantage of a lot of hearts. Like I was so inconsistent, and it's because of that idea of disconnecting from your feelings. So I had to reconnect to my emotions, be a different man, which allotted me the opportunity to be healthy and be healed.
Now, as far as because with masculinity, I feel like there's a the toxic part. Like I feel like there's a healthy part of masculinity, and I think there's a part of that where what's the I think that's different. There's kind of the, I don't want to get lost in the weeds or the nuances, but I do feel like there is some, it's okay to be masculine. To it's like if wherever that balance is, wherever that, I feel like there's a spectrum, and there is an unhealthiness to the macho and the machismo, but there also is a level of, no, that's natural. There's a natural level of masculinity. But it's like I was the same way. As far as the first time I cried was Malcolm X. Malcolm X died. That movie. That was the
Yeah.
first time I cried in like years, and then I didn't cry for years after that. And it's like now, this time in my life, I'm more connected as well with that circuitry, where it's like, yeah, I can shed tears, and when things happen now, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. Like I remember that disconnect and what that felt like. And now it's like I don't have that disconnect anymore. Maybe that's getting old, like pushing 40. Who knows? That
Yeah.
is part of that. But I do believe I think one of the things I think it's important as far as determining what is masculinity from your own perspective and your own challenges that you've overcome in life, rather than other people's perspective.
Yeah.
Now with that, like, what is your relationship with violence and abuse? Because I think with our culture, we've been manipulated so much. Like, I think every musician and rap artist should know about like the contract, like that was the 1991 contract between the executives and rappers to help feed the prison industrial system. And
Yeah.
that's like those are things where I feel like our culture, every artist, every aspiring rapper should know about. And that's where I feel like the toxic masculinity kind of becomes that, or our youth like not knowing about those moments where we're not just picking up the mic, but we actually know like, oh shit, let me create from my place.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like there's a lot of stuff that's out there that a lot of people aren't aware of. And, especially when it comes to violence and things like that. I was never in that culture for real. But what I was I was in the culture of I seen violence like within my household or violence like within constructs of things like that. You know what I mean? Like, so like that whole thing was a lot different for me, So and when it comes to like identifying to like toxic masculinity and things like that, it was more so like this idea of this is what you have to do to be a man, like from a construct or context that really caused people to suffer, like when people got into like these identity bouts, or they got into these emotional fits, or they would get to like feeling depressed or like lack because they didn't feel like they qualified within the constructs of what manhood looked like. And I think that we have to come, like you said, we have to really identify the structures of what defines manhood. And that for a long time, violence, gangs, drugs, like over like a bunch of women, that's what defined manhood, right? That's how you were perceived as the man, right? Oh, you the man, like, okay, you the man, you know what I'm saying? Look at you over there with the money, you over there with the girls, you over there with the cars, you the man, like, you know what I mean? Like we're really that structure was poorly defined, and we recycled it. We put it on TV, we continued it, we turned the volume up, you know what I mean? And then when it got to like, closer towards our generation and even the students now it's like, it's still money, fame, and drugs. It's the same thing. Like it hasn't changed. It's just language, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like that's the challenge, because like I still love seeing E40 in old videos, and it's like I still love that. I still have it's still, like, yeah, man, E40 at the pool with the women. It's like it makes me feel like nostalgia, but I'm not connected to it as I once was as a child. But but it still makes me happy to see, even though even old as he is, like I still get happy where I was like, yeah, man, y'all at the pool, y'all too old for that, but still, it's good to see y'all.
Right. I mean, that's the the maturity that it offers you, like your experience, it offers you that ability to do that, right? But for a lot of these young people, they're not offered that space because they haven't been developed in that space. So they're watching these things firsthand, like, yo, what do I need to do to get here? Right. And that's the difficulties.
Yeah. Okay, man. And I think that's important to keep pointing out, because I do think there is that sense of just rehashing things, and that's where I brought up that 1991 meeting, where it's like we're rehashing things from manipulation. So it's like so there's a period where our music was taken and manipulated, whereas like it's not rebellious when it's been curated, it's been curated to be a certain way, to be one extreme. And that's where I feel like the knowledge of knowing how we've come to this point. So we're not just rehashing everything. Now I wanted, as we talked about this earlier, is there a poem that you can share for the Fight the Funk crew?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. So I wrote a poetry book called This Little Boy, and that poetry book is a story about a young boy who grew up in an area where he didn't belong, who really battled and journeyed through a space that he didn't fit in, who really grew up life living upside down, tried to learn to live life right side up. So essentially it's my story through portions of going from a little boy to a teenager to a man to a father, and going through the journey of living life, trying to understand the struggles and the difficulties of overcoming. So it's just poetry in different spaces and stages of those portions of my life, and really just coming to the realization that I have more to offer. and that it was available. So I'll share the poem that really is named from the book, This Little Boy, and that's really just the story of a little boy. So here we go. Y'all, I remember my first real poem. I sat at the computer while my tears stroked the keyboard, my pain and lay within the stanzas, and my anger lashed out in metaphors. I repeated why from line to line, questioning the character and purpose to God's design like this one. This one individual couldn't belong to him. I thought this one distributor of sorrows and agony couldn't be cut from the same cloth as me. I mean, how did I arrive from those loins? And couldn't he see that my bloodshed didn't match that from which he came to be? But yet this was my reality. And it didn't belong in your picture perfect TV sitcom. See, I grew up in a different world where my family matters didn't fit, and how my brother, mother, cousin, and uncle feel would shake up my wheels. See, I was no Fresh Prince, and my life was unfamiliar, so these different strokes would wither away in my good times. And I had no clue where I fit in. In fact, I had a skewed image of what a black man was supposed to look like. In fact, I didn't even like how I looked, so the image of anything was better than this. This is a story of an unidentified human project that was molded into something that nobody could recognize. He became a reflection of what was popular at the moment and always dressed in his best self-consciousness, wrapped in how many different shades of fake could his facade portray. Yet no one took notice. No eyes cut to his cuts that were more similar to battle wounds. He laid prostrate on a mattress made of empty solemnness. He dug holes into his soul, praying someone would come fill his void, yet he didn't even know how to pray. He repeated practice redundancies, hoping someone heard him scream with urgency, please help me. Yet silence begets silence, and it all muffled his destiny. This little boy was dying, and no one would come to his rescue, so this little boy had to discover how to tend to his own wounds. He was left mangled, a hideous atrocity. Yet if you look for his disfigurements, I promise that you wouldn't see. This little boy cried on the inside and was flooding internally and left little room for his feelings, so he wore his emotions on his sleeve. This little boy choked on his insecurities because he wasn't taught to swallow things like his pride, and he never understood why they called them memories, because he remembered everything as if life was stuck on repeat, as if life was stuck on repeat, as if life was stuck on repeat. This little boy followed the wrong path because for a minute the road to death seemed a little more pleasing. This little boy thought accolades and self-humiliating behaviors would make life more easy. This little boy was poisoned by pornography and thought love was spelled S-E-X, so he tried to repeat the things he would see. This little boy was lonely and would constantly talk to strangers because at least they heard him speak. This little boy still survives, although he tried to die repeatedly. I'll introduce you to this little boy because he still resides inside of me. Hi, this little boy. Nice to meet you. Now, I remember my first real poem. I sat at the computer while my tears stroked the keyboard, my pain and led within the stanzas, and my anger lashed out in metaphors, but then I found God. So for my pain, my past, and my future, this little boy refuses to cry anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, man. That's powerful.
Thank you.
Now, when did you start writing poetry?
In 7th grade. I won my first poetry contest in 2nd grade, but I started for real writing poetry in 7th grade. I tell people all the time, like, poetry saved my life. Literally, I was dealing with depression. I was dealing with suicide, like all of those things. I was writing really, really dark poetry, like super dark. But I was like, wherever I could write it, I was writing it on the back of notebooks. I was writing it on the back of manila folders. Like I was writing it on random sheets of paper, just my random dark thoughts. And I collected it all. And I was showing a friend one day in my art class, and my friend was like, I was like, don't tell anybody, right? Because my poetry was really dark. Now I would flip it at the end to kind of like give me this like, you know, haha, I'm just kidding kind of thing. So just in case anybody read it, I could be like, no, look, it was a joke, right? Like I was already thinking, right? But it was pretty dark. Like it was about a lot about death and things like that. And then I showed her, and I said, "Don't tell anybody." Right. Of course, she told somebody. She told the teacher, and the teacher pulled me outside and basically asked me about the poetry and told me that I had two choices, that we could either pretty much tell the teacher, tell the principal, call my parents, and all of that, or we could I could keep writing and then just keep writing. And so I kept writing, and now this is what I do.
That's powerful, man. And then so can you just kind of run down, like, because you do so much, man, like the writing. So you have the book out, and I put up the website. So what all can people find you, and what what you offer?
Yeah, so I mean, you can follow me on Instagram at When Thunder Speaks. I do spoken word. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm the program director for Rescue a Generation. I'm a youth minister. I do so many different things like in that capacity, but I also work to love and motivate people. I'm a father, which is one of my most proud titles I get to have. And I'm a believer in the individual. And I believe that individual stories matter, and that investing in shifting stories can shift generations, right? One story can change a lifetime of people, right? And it's about a decision, and I think that's really what it comes down to, being able and being willing to make a decision to motivate people past their spaces. And that's really what it comes down to for me, what it's been for me, and what I'll continue to do. And yeah.
Well, man, thank you so much for being a part of this. Like, inspiring, man. You inspire me. I'm sure you inspire so many others. And I'm getting a little post. Okay, you put it up. Okay, yeah, man. And your book can be found on your website.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you go to www.paapparels.com, and then you click on this little boy. You click the link; it'll take you to my to the publisher website, and you can grab that. Also, if you want to check my poetry out and my story, you can go to paapparels.com and click on When Thunder Speaks, and then find that there. And really, just whatever you look for, you need, you can pretty much find me in any of those places.
Okay, dope, man. Yeah, I just put it up on the screen. People can see it. Thank you so much, man, for being here. Brandon Christopher Allen, Mr. Allen. Appreciate you, man. Love what you're doing. You are motivating and special, man. Enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you also.
Definitely. Much love, man. All right, everybody. That was Brandon Christopher Allen on Fight the Funk podcast. He is an author, TEDx speaker, spoken word artist. Have you heard his poetry? And more importantly, a father. So I hope that was enlightening. Like I said, Fight the Funk, we explore mental health, culture, and the world around us. And this has been the 50th episode. And I hope you guys are inspired to keep learning, keep growing, and keep finding ways to be a better version of yourself. So stay well, be well. Much love. Magic with 2 A's. Deuces.